You're right.
Yeah, they're an outside
Yeah,
legal group.
right, right. Sorry about that. And that they would be bringing under the International Criminal Court law of promoting genocide as a public figure or journalist,
Right.
that they would be using it because he's from, as when he gets into the whole thing, he's from Yorkshire to be specific, not just London, not England or London, and that because he would be in England, that's where the trial would ostensibly take place. Not that it would be England or the British Crown taking people to. Right, I
Correct.
think we're just clarifying. Okay, right on. All right, here we go.
Might intervene and stop that. That might happen. But you know what? It's not just the West anymore, right? You know, the world's changing. Geopolitics of the world is changing. Now we've got the global South. We've got India. We've got China. We've got countries across the globe that have been criticised for decades for not applying international humanitarian law in their own way. And now they're seeing that the West is actually only paying lip service to it. Well, I'm going to encourage them to apply international humanitarian law to their judicial systems. And so we're engaging in conversations with them. And when this politician that I talked about from the UK who thinks, oh, I've done my 5 years, I've now got this fantastic job in some investment, like I said, travel to Malaysia or Singapore or Colombia, Venezuela, watch out. Yeah, because they might. And they're likely to. And one of the reasons they might do is because they might say, these are your laws. These are the laws you've been hitting us over the head with for ages. It's not going to be safe for any political actor, military actor, that has engaged in war crimes. And as far as, it doesn't matter, I was going to say, as long as I live, it's probably a bad thing to say. As long as ICGP and lawyers like me exist, and there's plenty of us, and organisations like ICGP exist, and once we've set that track off, it works by itself.
So
because I thought exactly the same thing as he was talking.
Right.
My man.
Right. Because that's the part of it. So in a way, one of the things that I feel like this entire situation has really brought to the forefront, right, is the understanding that the Western world and this government in particular, along with the Canadian government, along with the UK government, along with some of the European countries, they have all been telling everybody else how to behave, right? Like, you're doing this wrong. You're treating these people wrong. You're not doing fair elections. You're not. Meanwhile, they have never been in compliance with the international laws and expectations. But this particular situation has put that out in front in a way that I don't think has ever happened to my knowledge, right? It has not, I mean, in the face of literal genocide, death, destruction, occupation, apartheid, all those things, the United States had the nerve to be the solo voice of dissent against stopping it. Right? And it has created a situation in which people must ask the question, well, wait a minute. I thought you were the beacon of hope and truth and fairness and democracy, and right? Like, people have to ask that question if they even take a second to realize how hypocritical it all is. And it is fascinating to me to watch these things happen and to see some of the responses. And every time I see something like this, a conversation like this, I immediately think of Daruba. And I immediately think to myself, is this something that's applicable? Like, if a mayor gets on TV and promotes the armed agents of their state, and then the armed agents of their state turn around and kill somebody, have they then aided and abetted? I don't know. I'm not an attorney. I don't know, but it's an interesting question.
And I can't wait to see attorneys really grapple with that question, or to the extent they haven't, or put us onto the work that's been done, because that is, if I to a certain extent, many and several, at least not, I don't know about many, but there's a tradition of just Black American struggle equating what has been happening here as genocide.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I even make it, when you look at the UN argument definition of genocide around just cultural destruction and distortion, I made the argument in the hip hop context that just what's being done to hip hop and the distortion of Black expression is genocide, is part of a So because if I understand correctly, once it's defined as genocide, as is the case, is because that's what he was talking about in the context of this discussion of what's happening to the Palestinians. If you can get it defined as that, I think that would probably, it feels like that, to in my inexpert thought, would be the hurdle to convince an illegal argument that first Black people are suffering genocide, and then when you advocate policing of Black people, you are advocating. But I love
right. And Ricky
let's make that
Ricky
argument.
put a question in, and I read it when she wrote it, and then so many people started writing that. Okay, so she wrote, if you all return to the discussion on genocide, can you maybe discuss how that may impact the current We Charge Genocide Tribunals and petition that's happening now, referring to the work of Jalil Muntakim and Spirit of Mandela? And I feel like this is all lock in step, right? Like that's part of what I know what my goal is I want this to be the conversation. And I would love to help find a way to make this the conversation and to raise this contradiction that if people look at the international rules, which is exactly, I keep coming back to that ICC and that report that Professor Campbell was a part of. And the reason I always keep circling back to that is because they outlined it specifically in there, how the current behavior of the armed agents of the state, with the support of the state and the government and the funding of the state and the government, are contributing to the genocide of people in this country. Right. So I'm not sure if that's what, I don't know what Ricky was hoping to go, but I mean, if this is something that's really going right now, if that's what they're pushing for, then yes. But it's something that, if that's what the Spirit of Mandela is taking on, then I
and the documentary is on its way here. So yeah, I think all of those efforts should be, and that's sort of what I was pointing to, that tradition of We Charge Genocide, get that on the books again, and then make that part of the legal argument. I think that's a fantastic line of reasoning.
Yes. And Ricky will have to forgive me because I've got so many different things in my head. I know there was a tribunal, but I think the ICC, the International Commission report that I always have in my brain was separate and going simultaneously. So that's the interesting part. And I am curious if there was any communication and connection between those two things, because I just don't know.